What's up, dudes? Max here. Got kind of a unique video today because we are on the eve of what is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's PC launch. And big shout out to Square Enix for providing a code. I've been playing this thing for a few days before this day, so I can kind of jump in and give you guys kind of a review and my thoughts and feelings on the PC version overall. So, to preface this, the PlayStation 5 version, almost exclusively how we've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, outside of a second system that came out back in November, is what we had to go from. And the big perspective we had was that performance mode on FF7 Rebirth definitely came with some pretty interesting caveats. At times, an extremely blurry image, depending on what side of the world you were at. And that game, obviously extremely detail-rich, but just could not get a rock-solid 60 with all that detail, so their performance mode rendered pretty low on a base PS5. Now, I know a lot of people ended up playing it this way, but for me personally, as you saw with my playthrough, the majority of my playthrough was actually spent in graphics mode. And I felt that I didn't want to play a pseudo-action RPG at 30 FPS, but my god, dude, just seeing what the final image quality was from the performance mode compared to the graphics mode was so vast and so different that it felt transformative, where it's like, okay, I just prefer to lose 30 FPS because I just see everything so much better. So I did, and, you know, that came with some caveats. Some things were more difficult. You have to switch parts of the game over to performance mode in 60 FPS for it to actually just run better, which wasn't exactly a terrible thing, but there was always, like, the thought in the back of my head, like, man, just where's the PC version? It'd be so nice if there's a PC version. And then a little bit later, the PlayStation 5 Pro version came out. I historically bought a PlayStation 5 Pro. I called it the FF7 Rebirth Pro, just for that game, and it was really impressive. But we learned that it is the same game. It's rendering pretty much the same image that performance mode was, but just allowing their sort of proprietary upscaling technology, the pisser, to take that image and make it look a lot better. And believe it or not, it really worked. Dude, FF7 Rebirth on the PS5 Pro looks awesome, and is easily like one of the best ways you can possibly play the game. That is until now. So, overall impressions, I'm going to tell you straight up what I'm running this thing on, and that is kind of one of the biggest caveats to PC gaming, is that I'm running this game on a 4090, a bit unfair, and a Ryzen 7800X 3D. So, extremely capable hardware for what Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is. But as I understand, like, the game is Steam Deck ready. It seems very scalable from the recommended specs. But let's just talk about my experience. So, even though, yeah, I got a good CPU and I got a 4090, does that mean that the majority of PC gaming that I experience is not burdened by technical hiccups and issues within said games on PC? Absolutely not, dude. We all know that's the case. Like, just because you have better hardware in the modern day PC market does not guarantee that that is going to solve problems. Maybe back in the day it would, but nowadays, no. Like, if a game has an issue, that game usually has an issue on almost all of the hardware across, like, the foundation. There's usually an issue with the core game itself being scalable in some way, and we literally saw this with Final Fantasy VII Remake on PC. The first experience of that wasn't particularly great. It starts up in DX12, and it has a lot of stuttering, and it's like, ooh, this is rough. Like, especially considering the PS5 version of the game, which ran at 60, ran so smooth. Like, why can't this be smooth? So this is where a lot of us were concerned. Like, oh no, is FF7 Rebirth going to go through the same problems on the PC version?
Take it from here.
The best part about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on PC, I can say, is that between all of the other big Square Enix sort of like mainline Final Fantasy releases, going back to the first one I kind of played with, like FF15 on PC and all that kind of stuff, FF16 with the issues that had at launch, and then obviously FF7 Remake, this one has absolutely been the smoothest experience I have had with a PC version of a game from this company outside of like maybe FF14, you know, but that's like a game really designed for PC. So that is extremely good news. I'll tell you how it works. The beginning of the game starts off with a shader compilation, as it should, and the shader comp can take anywhere between like 30 to 60 seconds, and if you install new hardware or, you know, update your drivers, it has to rebuild that shader comp. I did this a couple of times just to mess around, and as I was playing through the game, I noticed as soon as you first load in after that shader comp, there's a little bit of stutters, like here and there, where it's kind of like building things live and in front of you. But you're not seeing those things being built. It's like in the engine in the back. But fairly within like 15 to 20 to 30 seconds, those stutters stopped. And then if you would turn the game off and then come back in, all right, does it go through the same process again? Is there a whole bunch of stutters and does it happen? And it doesn't. So that seems to be typically, at least in my 4090, you know, my 4090 and CPU situation, a little bit of stutters like at the beginning, and then they're gone. Outside of that, like, the amount of times I would go from towns and environments from one place to the next, there's no weird environmental issues of like stutters and stuff like that, which has absolutely plagued this engine and games on this engine over the past console generation or two. So that's really good news. The smoothness of the game, once that's over, is very much comparable to how smooth the experience is on PlayStation. I'd say like 99% of what I've played, like the 12, 13 hours I've played, is pretty comparable. But there's a big difference here, dude. I'm running this thing at 4K, almost locked 120. And I'd say almost locked 120 because there is some differences in there. The way the game works on the PC options end, and it isn't the most illustrious of options for a PC version. This is a Square Enix game, right? So the amount of options that it does give you is some unique stuff. So the game at 120 is one thing. The game natively at 4K is another, but there is options for the scalable functions of it. So if there is a point where the game needs to drop some resolution, it can go down to like, I think it's like 66%, like 50%, and like 33%. So meaning if it's like 4K, it's going to drop down to like 2K-ish every once in a while, or somewhere in between, to keep it at 120. And this is very hard to notice on a 4K monitor that's running at 120 hertz. It's very difficult to see those differences, much less like every once in a while it might drop down to like, you know, 110, maybe like a bit in the hundreds, but mostly as the larger 90 to 95% of my experience, that thing is sitting at 120 with DLSS on. DLSS off, it has TAU and TAA, and I just don't love the look of it, personally. The DLSS in this game looks really sharp, and it runs very well. So for my experience, I kind of leave it at like 100% rendering, leave it at 4K, but then if you need to drop it down to 66% of that, you can, which is somewhere between like 2K to 4K. You can do that. So that's great. That means that we do not get an experience similar to the PlayStation version, which the resolution can kind of be all over the place, even in the higher resolution mode, just so that it can keep a solid 30, just so that it can keep a 60, you know. So there's definitely, I'd say, comparable frame-to-frame image quality to the PlayStation 5 Pro version, which already looks damn good. But there's a big difference. PS5 Pro version had a big problem, and a lot of issues in the environment in FF7 Rebirth just could not hold under load. And you notice it when you're playing it, and it kind of takes you out of the game. It isn't the most defining thing of the entire, you know, game itself, but there was a lot of popping, dude. And you sort of saw trees and rocks and everything render in front of you. And I don't mean far in front of you. I mean like right in front of your character at times. Almost like it was a Dreamcast, dude. These worlds are very vast and they're very big, and the scaling and streaming of that much data can be a little cumbersome, especially in Unreal Engine 4. So the fact that the FF7 devs got it to run as smooth as it did on PlayStation 5 is still really impressive. In this version of the game, there's an option for background objects and like background object consistency. It's something like that, where you set an option between low, medium, high, or ultra. And I think somewhere between medium and high is what the PS5 version was doing, which is things sort of render in kind of in front of you. And there's a bit of pop-in as you're running around, and the detail of the world fills in pretty close to your character. But if you put it on ultra, it's very different. And I didn't see as substantial of a performance hit on my end. You might obviously see more on other hardware. and I'm not going to Digital Foundry this. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they're saying. But in my experience of just playing the game, it looked great, man. And I get to some vistas that are really far away that let me, like, you know, move forward. And I could see how far ahead it takes for those objects to start popping in. And it's really far, dude, like 100 to 200 yards, like away from where your main character is. So the detail and fidelity of the world around you it's so much more consistent and better looking than it was on PlayStation 5. And that's like the big takeaway from this experience. The other one's lighting, and yeah, a lot of the lighting in some of the cutscenes is definitely different, but I have noticed that like some of the issues of the lighting do persist from each different version of the game, but overall it feels like the lighting quality in the world itself and just running around the environment and experiencing the game in the environments, well, very, very similar, obviously, to what the core experience was on PlayStation 5. It looks great, man. It looks quite good. I even put my shadows on low because I didn't notice that much of a difference, and I saw a pretty big performance jump just in general. But yeah, I've been, for like 13 to 15-ish hours, I have been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I did literally everything in the grasslands. I did literally everything in the Junon area. I 100%ed them just because I was running around and enjoying it. And I didn't think I was going to do that. To be real, replaying this game comes with some caveats, and this is sort of a game review as well of the PC version. On a second playthrough where you're introduced to everything in the environment again, and I'm not going through hard mode. We'll talk about that a bit later. I do have some criticisms of the second playthrough, because the first time you play, everything's sort of slapping you in the face and your eyes and your ears, and you're just like, oh god, it's so cool. So like it is a good first experience, but there's a lot of it. The issue on the second experience is that there is so much of it, and some of it can take so long to do. And I do mean between some environmental animations, the characters interacting with things, chocobos going up walls, Barrett pushing minecarts, like all of these little things can really slow the game to a crawl when you want to just move forward and move forward fast. So if there's something I can actually be critical of FF7 Rebirth in its totality a year after the game's come out, it's that a lot of those elements I wish we could do faster. And there's an R2 button that you can usually press to go a little bit faster, but that thing feels like it's a 10%, man. Like I want to feel like, oh, if I just want to go, I can make this go quicker, you know? And a lot of stuff when you're doing things in the world of FF7 Rebirth can take a little bit longer to do. So I've had a ton of fun just blitzkrieging from one destination to the next on Chocobo, just getting things done and slam and then fast travel here and there. The loading is a breeze. There's like no issue with the loading, but I have found that going back and doing these things and just interacting with the world specifically and skipping a lot of cutscenes and I just want to see how the game looks, you know, has been very enjoyable. I've liked it a lot, and even playing it on normal, which I have not done before, I really have enjoyed too. So this has been a joy. Like, I'm having a great time. I don't know about everybody else. I cannot speak for everybody else. Just for the hell of it, I tried to fire up the game on somewhat older hardware. I have a rig that has a 1080 Ti in it, and it did not work. So, I mean, that's way below the recommended specs, if anybody's wondering. It just did not recognize that DirectX at all, so it was inoperable. So the only thing I'm running on is my main rig, which is obviously a 4090. And yes, it is the most privileged way you can possibly play the game outside of maybe a 5090. But in my experience with a lot of PC games that have come out over the past year from like Japanese companies, it really isn't about just the hardware to throw hardware and straight, you know, CUDA cores at things or whatever. No, it's usually coming down to how the game operates and how it works. And luckily enough, this runs pretty damn good. And I'm very happy to say that, like, if you guys were waiting for the PC experience of FF7 Rebirth, it seems like the wait is worth it, because this is likely just the best way to play the game. And this is before like anything happens in the future with it, like future patches, anything like that, anything fans do. Like, we don't know where this is eventually going to go, because, you know, turning DirectX 11 on was the way you kind of fixed FF7 Remake on PC, and it ran a lot better after that. So for me speaking personally, I'm really enjoying going through the game again and having it just be totally different, where it's just, man, like I played through this way, but dude, playing FF7 Rebirth and experiencing its combat and the timing of all the actions in the game and parrying at 120 FPS is just something to behold. And I do hope that for anybody else that has got like lower hardware, like a 3000 series or whatnot, that you're able to play the game at high refresh rate. I would highly recommend just give it a shot at like 1080p with DLSS and try high refresh rate and see if you can get those numbers to get that high. And if you have a monitor that supports it, because you obviously need over a 60 FPS monitor, it is just so smooth, man. It's one of my favorite parts of this entire thing so far, is just how smooth this game looks running at really high frame rates. Anyway, that's my impressions. Playthrough-wise, I'm just going to continue this. I'm probably going to spend a bit of time off-stream doing this stuff the same way I did, because I still want to try to like get everything and do everything the same way I did before, but I'm just skipping a lot of the cutscenes because we've seen the majority of them, and a lot of the inconsequential ones we can just go through, get the thing, and move on. And the game's been kind of fun playing that way, so that's what I'm going to be doing later today as I'm going to be streaming the game, trying to get back to hard mode, because I do want to continue the hard mode playthrough, but it's pretty hard for me to go back to the PlayStation 5 Pro because it's in the trash. I just took my PS5 Pro and I threw it in the trash, and then I berated it. I spat on every functional part of it. The problem is there's a PC version, and I know your question is, why would you throw your PS5 Pro in the trash when you could play other games on it? And my answer to you is, but Rebirth's on PC and it's good. So why do I need it? So I threw it away into the trash. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be streaming the game more on YouTube and Twitch. If you want to see the better quality video, the YouTube video should look pretty dang good. And when we eventually do get back to hard mode, we'll continue that hard mode playthrough, because I really want to get back to all that stuff. I was having a great time with it. But right now I'm just enjoying playing the game and getting all the stuff once again throughout the main game playthrough. So if you guys want to join that, Twitch and YouTube are the best ways to take part. But until then, I'll be back with more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth / remake / part 3 news as soon as possible, as soon as we learn more. And thank you, a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching. My name is Max, and I'll see you dudes next time.